Okay, I'm going to peel some garlic. I got some cloves here. This silicone. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off the root type part, which is the end, the non-pointy piece. Take them off. Alright, throw them aside into the sink. Put the garlic here. You can do one or two at a time, but I'll show you one at a time. If you go like that and roll it, you don't hear any more crunchy, and then when you go like this, boom, comes out nice and clean. So I am going to do that to all of these. One thing to let you know, like that one's not quite as round. Oh, push, boom, but still, way off. I'll clean that out a little bit, because if you get too much of the skin inside this, it doesn't grab the skin of a new clove, and it won't come out nice and clean. Boom. Very simple. Okay, now I'm going to mince the garlic. I like to use a microplane. It's a pretty fine grind, and it's pretty easy. You can either do it across the board, or if you have a cup, you can actually do it over it, just like that. But I'm going to do it on the board and then scoop it up and put it in the cup. But it's as simple as going down like this. And you can see it makes quick use of that garlic. Go down to the end, toss that. You'll notice that it stays on the bottom right now, but the more you do it, it'll start falling off the bottom of the microplane and onto the board. That out. Be careful not to scrape your fingers on this because it is very sharp. Those are little tiny razor blades, and I've done it before. There, the end. A couple of taps, and there you go, minced garlic. Now I'm going to shred some Parmesan, Parmigiano Reggiano, Ambrolia, aged for 24 months, and I need about a cup and a half maybe. And this time I'm going to use a xylus, which is very similar to the microplane. But I'm also going to use this Pyrex bowl, which I like because you can see 1 cup, 2 cups from the top of the bowl without having to look to the side. So I will put this over the bowl and start shredding it, just back and forth, of course, and it goes right into the bowl. Okay, the next part is I need about 1 cup of breadcrumbs. I'm using a seasoned breadcrumbs panko, which are a little bit larger. 4C is a good company. It's actually a Brooklyn company, and you can see they're not the small sandy type pieces you find in regular breadcrumbs. They're actually a little bit bigger, and they just add a little bit more bread and texture flavor, especially for the stuffed braciole that I'll be making. And again, I'm looking for the 1 cup there. I'm looking good. Okay, now I am going to cut some scallions up. Take the roots into the sink. And I'm going to go ahead and slice them up. As you can see, the green and the white are all going to be chopped up. Now this is going to go in with all this mixture along with some eggs for the braciole stuffing. Now you can chop them up as much as you want. You can leave them sliced like this. A nice little oniony bite. Of course, it's going to cook in the sauce for over 3 hours. But that's how we go. That's all I'm going to do it because I like a little bit of texture in there. And now all I need is the eggs, a mixing bowl, and we're going to add all these ingredients together. So I actually have 2 scallions, a quarter teaspoon, or half a teaspoon actually, of salt, half a teaspoon of ground pepper, 3 pretty good sized garlic cloves. I got about a cup and a third of Parmesan, and I got a cup of panko breadcrumbs. Okay, I just finished chopping. So I got 2 scallions chopped up, white and green parts. I got a half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of ground pepper, 3 medium to large size garlics minced up, about a cup and a third of Parmesan Reggiano, and I got a cup of panko breadcrumbs. All I need now are 6 eggs, mix it all together, and that's going to be the braciole stuffing. Okay, now I got my 6 eggs here and all the ingredients. So now on this bowl, which is a stainless steel bowl, I actually kind of mutilated this half here. One, to make it easier to pour, and two, when I want to crack eggs, I do have a flat end rather than the rounded end that's on this bowl. So that comes in handy. So I'm obviously going to, how easy that cuts, just put the eggs in. Now I do put the eggs on a paper towel over here so they don't roll off onto the floor, which is a mess. However, should that ever happen to you, the best thing to do is put salt on it, because eggs are impossible to get up. But you put a whole bunch of salt over the eggs, and then you wait a little while, and of course salt gets the moisture in. There goes the breadcrumbs, and it's easier to pick up in about 10 minutes. Breadcrumbs, there's the freshly grated Parmesan, the garlic, the pepper, the salt, and of course, the scallions. Now, you can use different mixtures. A lot of people will use fresh Italian parsley instead of the scallions, but I like the scallions because it gets a little extra bite. And I'm gonna go ahead and mix this up with a whisk and break up the yolks and start stirring it around. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, here's the mixture. Now, just to show you, I want it more pasty, and it seems to be a little too fluid. You can use a little bit more pasty. So, in order to do that, of course, we have everything in there, and I want a paste texture, is I'll add a little bit more breadcrumbs. That's maybe not even a quarter cup that I just put in there. And that will absorb some of the moisture and give me a thicker mixture. Now, you don't have to really worry about diluting it because you've already got all the spices in there, and you want that mixture to be a little bit more firm so it'll stay on the bracioles after I pound the meat and put it on. And you can see it's not quite as coming out as much as before. So that's probably a good consistency. Okay, now I'm going to cut the pork loin into thin strips, which I'm going to later pound down. Now, this is a little stiff because I actually put this in the freezer for about 20 minutes, which gives it a little bit of chill and also makes it easier to slice. I'm using a 10-inch knife here, and I'm going to put about, I guess that's about a 1/2 inch. And so I'm just going to cut through and make all these little cutlets, which I will pound down later. I'll show you the way I do it, so it kind of prevents a mess. We will trim that off, but I'm going to go through. It is a little harder to cut through, just for the senses that is partially frozen. Okay, I cut that piece of loin, which is about 1/3 of a whole loin that was here. There's a piece that I'm not going to use, but I'll probably keep it in the refrigerator, chop it up a bit, and throw it into the tomato sauce. But I didn't tell you the weight. So let's see what this third, because you know, loin's different. People cut them different sizes. So I'll just put them all on my handy little scale here. And we'll throw that in for good luck. Well, 2.5 pounds, as you can see over here. It's 2.5 pounds of meat. And I'll show you in a minute, but I'm gonna trim the fat off of these, and then we're gonna pound them down to thin cutlets and use that mixture we did earlier for the stuffing. And then we're gonna tie them up. This is not the first video I wanted to do because it is a pretty complex cooking, but I'm hoping to do ones that are a lot easier later on. But since I'm cooking this for tonight's dinner, I figure I would videotape it. Okay, now I'm going to show you what I do with these cutlets. I'm only going to show one piece. Just for the senses, I'm going to go through one piece of everything that is done to it. and through the pounding, through the stuffing, through the rolling, and then in a second video I'm going to show you how to tie it. But normally I would pound all the meat at one time and work like a chain. So pound all the meat, spread it out. I do have a thick plastic wrap. It's actually a drop cloth type stuff. And I'll put all the meat out, all flattened out. Then I'll put the stuffing in. And then once they're all like that, then I'll cut all the string and tie them all up at once. So anyway, so this is a little too much fat, but of course fat is flavor. So I'm going to trim, and I'm using now a boning knife, some of the fat off. Okay, just a thin line of fat, and again, fat is flavor. So now people use wax paper, plastic wrap. I like to use a cutting board that is somewhat translucent. You can see my hands, and when I put that down, you can see the meat. So when I pound it, I'm not wasting plastic wrap. Nothing is spreading all over, so I'm not shooting pork juices everywhere. And I can see how much it's spreading out, and I can feel the thickness through it. So, a few good pounds. Feel it's definitely, obviously getting thinner. You can see even the fat line gets larger. Yes, this is not the most easy meal to make, but now it's flattened out. You can see it's, compared to another one, it's probably a little over twice the size. Now, I'm going to salt, well, first, actually, I am going to put some olive oil on it. And that, of course, add flavor to the sauce. That's going to sit in for 3 hours, so tomato sauce. Also help the salt and pepper to dissolve in there. Now, most people will salt low, but if you salt high, you get more of a even saltiness to it. Now, I'm using kosher salt. So I'll put that there. Same with the pepper. You do it higher up and you'll get it'll spread out and you'll get more of an even coating of it. Okay, I am going to flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. Okay, a little bit of salt, high up. A little bit of pepper, high up. Okay, now I'm going to use some of the stuffing that we made, which is basically the Parmesan, the panko breadcrumbs. As you can see, the green onions are in there. And I'm going to put a layer. Now, of course, you can wear gloves, but that's just to keep your hands clean, because this is going to be cooked for 3 hours in a simmering sauce at over 200 degrees, so nothing's going to survive it. Anyway, so you put that on. You always leave a little bit of an edge to it, because you are going to roll it up. So that's the stuffing. So now I like to roll it up the long ways. And you have your stuffing. You notice there's some on the side there, but I'm going to put that over, and I'm going to put string at both ends, and then I'll put a string on each end here, which you'll see in 1 minute, because I have to cut my string. I wasn't prepared. Okay, now I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of string. Now, I usually will, when I bake them all there, I'll cut all the string, and I won't pile them together because it's really a pain to try to separate them once they're in. So I'm going to go to the end, and funny enough, with my fingers and all that touching the meat, the string gets a little bit wet, which is good because you can do one pull and it tightens it. Put one string on that end, and this you can fold a little bit over, because we are going to brown these in a skillet before we put them in the sauce, which I have yet to make. But again, doesn't loosen up. That's because of all the good oil and everything else that's on my fingers gets on the string. So now I did the ends, and the reason I do the ends first is because when I do the middle and it starts to push it in, stuff can really come out the ends. It'll even sometimes come out this corner here, but mostly it likes to go that way. Okay, just doing a plain old double knot. And of course, this one's not working. It's not behaving for me. There we go. And then the last one, I'm going to go underneath, about the center. Give it a good pull. And voila. Now, of course, you can go ahead and cut the strings off. Now, here's one of the deals. You don't want to serve this with the strings on. You want to cut them all off, but sometimes it's hard to find them. So a lot of times I'll leave one edge out, so it's easier for me to find it after it's in the sauce for 3 hours and before I serve it. I can find these and cut them off. And of course, cut the whole thing off because it's done its purpose. And that way people are not chewing on string. Okay, now I'm going to cook a fresh tomato sauce, a little fresh to the point that I'm using canned tomatoes instead of jars. But first thing I'm going to do is I got extra virgin olive oil in there. You don't want to get it too hot because it will smoke. And I got 1 cup of diced onions, which is about half a large onion. I'm going to put that in. You'll notice it's not sizzling right off the bat. The reason I do that is because the extra virgin olive oil will smoke if it gets too hot. So I started out there with a low. It'll soak up some of the oil, which will also be transferred into the sauce. Okay, I've been sauteing the onions for a while. Now you can see it kind of looks brown over here, but it's really not. That's actually just the lighting, which I'll have to play around with and get lighting up and above. But if you notice, I move everything away. There's no brown. That's the onions looking good. It's been doing it for quite a few minutes. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in the garlic. And I got about 4 cloves, medium cloves of garlic. That's going to go in. And I am going to saute that for about 30 seconds. And I'll actually turn my timer on. It's definitely smelling good. Little onions and garlic all around. And that's going to be the base of the sauce. Now again, this is a tomato sauce, and it's going to take probably about 3 hours or more to cook. But also, while it's cooking, I'll be putting the braciole in, which will also flavor the sauce. If you remember earlier, there's the 30 seconds. So now I am going to go ahead and throw, I got a can of diced, a can of crushed, petite, diced, and petite Italian style, which will just add a little extra garlic, basil, and oregano. Now mix that up. You can see it's chunky, but after 3 hours, all the larger pieces of the tomato will break down and give me a nice, rich, thick sauce. Again, 3 hours, there's going to be a lot of evaporation going on and thus reducing. So now I'm going to put the Parmesan in. Got about a half a cup of Parmesan. That'll also help thicken the sauce. This is an Italian blend, which is basically thyme, oregano, little rosemary, and marjoram is in that. And for salt, I'm just going to take a pinch, throw it in, and a pinch of garlic. Now I'm going to stir this up. I got the heat on burner at a 4 right now, which I will turn it down. I'm going to wait for this to get up to simmer. And And then we're just going to keep waiting. I will adjust the spices as needed by tasting it. Now here's a handy little tip. On the cans, you know, the lids breaks off nice and easy. Of course, razor sharp. If you put that in there flat to the bottom and then crush it, it will not come out in the garbage can, and thus it will not cut you in a razor blade through it or break the garbage bag open. Okay, now I got the oil and I want to get it pretty hot. As you can see here, it is about 380 degrees. I am going to add the braciole. Nice and sizzling. Now, the braciole right here is cold. And I'm going to put about 4. I don't want to overcrowd the plate because it'll steam rather than brown. I do have, if you notice, the extra string. I didn't cut off because after, when it cooks, you'll find that string and then cut the whole rings off before serving. And again, you don't want to serve string to people. But I am going to brown this. I got 8 pieces to go. And once I do that, they're brown, I'm going to put it in the sauce, which I will show you in a minute after it's brown. Okay, now you can see the braciole is brown, and I'm going to put it directly into the sauce. Now I want to show you, this will be 3 hours. And I'm going to put all the pieces in here. Now you notice some of the filling, which I mentioned earlier, will pop out because as the meat is getting hot, it is expanding and you get some of the little bits and pieces of stuffing. So I always just throw them right in because don't forget, that is nothing but Parmesan cheese and garlic and all good stuff that's in there. So put them in there. Now continue doing the rest, and that's going to cook for 3 hours.